Jussie Smollett, the idea that the charges were dropped. What do we think about that? It's good. So he faked being the victim of a hate crime, according to reports.
I think it's bad.
So we had all of these like felony charges against him, and the Chicago prosecutors just dropped him.
I think it's bad.
Okay, I think it's bad. Yeah, the police chief is not happy with it in Chicago. So like, it wasn't the police chief that dropped the charges. Police chief and the mayor, they're not happy with it. And one of the controversial things with this, people will bring up, like, look, if you have this guy getting off, what is there to prevent other people from doing it in the future? And they say, like, for actual hate crime victims, it will make it so that people might believe them less because you had this actor and you might have other people that occasionally exaggerate things or fake it. So the police superintendent and the mayor, what they said was that it was a whitewash of justice. What does that mean, a whitewash of justice? We know what a whitewashing is in the first place. Yeah, Austin.
Oh, no, I don't know what it is.
Okay, that's fine. So if you have a history textbook that's been whitewashed, if there's been a whitewashing of history, people will say that you have a lot of stuff that was censored or taken out of it. So what this means is, so you can say like it wasn't an accurate history. What you can say if you have a whitewash of justice, that it's like you had kind of a censoring of justice. You didn't have justice served. You didn't have the justice happen that should have, which they would have argued would be him going to jail or something, some like more serious punishment than what he's getting. So he had to pay. He had to forfeit a $10,000 bond, and then he had to do some community service for his actions. Any other thoughts or questions there? But at the same time, you do have some political commentators, you have some individuals working for news agencies that have said things concerning Jussie Smollett, like there's no such thing as hate crimes. And that's a pretty like ridiculous statement to make. Maybe there's individuals in their base that like that kind of idea, but there is plenty of documentation throughout history and even modern times of individuals being targeted based on their race, religion, like their orientation, all kinds of topics. All right, so vaccinations. New York, they've recently banned people. They've banned people from public places that have not been vaccinated. So they claim, like, if you haven't received your vaccinations, you can't go into public areas. And they justify this because there was a measles outbreak that happened last fall. Is this problematic? Does this go against anyone's like constitutional rights? Yeah.
I feel like it kind of does, and also, isn't that hard to track? I mean, are there going to be people out there asking people for, I don't know, did you get vaccinated, and if not, send them home? Like, how would that work out?
Yeah, that's something I've wondered. I don't know. They don't really go into it here. I'd imagine they have some kind of way to try and track who's been vaccinated and who hasn't. If it's a school, at least, I believe schools have records of individuals that have been vaccinated. But as far as like if someone's just walking around in a park, I don't know how exactly they would try and identify that. But the justification, they say like, all right, if you want to be allowed into certain places, you have to go along with what society's doing. You have to be vaccinated because they argue that it's dangerous for other individuals to have a lot of unvaccinated members of the population going around. But can rest assured that anti-vaxxers, people that don't like vaccination, they are going to be extremely upset about this measure and about what's happening in New York. Caleb, did you have your hand up at some point?
No.
You're just,
Like this.
you're just in the air celebrating?
Yeah.
And then since we've been talking about the Middle East the last couple weeks, we've talked about Israel and the Gaza Strip. Just wanted to highlight this right here. It reflects what we've discussed before, but even this year alone, you've had a lot of like rockets going from Gaza Strip into Israel. So just in the last week, you had 60 rockets being launched into Israel. And Israel responds with airstrikes. So again, like an airstrike is pretty it's pretty damaging. It's going to do more damage than a couple like rockets, even 60 rockets being launched in. And that goes back to the topic of like Israel having like a lot of resources, having a lot of money compared to some parts of the Middle East, and being backed by the United States. But you have one of the senior Hamas officials in Gaza Strip claiming that they want to have a long-term ceasefire. And they also want to ease the blockade that's been set on the Gaza Strip. Okay, I wanted to show at least one more article. This has to do with a Utah politician. Okay, again, who are the two senators for Utah? Okay, Rami, and then who's the other guy?
Mike Lee.
Okay, Mike Lee. So Senator Mike Lee, yesterday, they were going to be discussing a resolution by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the Senate. And before this, he gave like a little presentation to senators in which he was making fun of the Green New Deal. He was saying that he was basically like, he was trying to indicate that it was a ridiculous proposal. He had pictures in his presentation of Ronald Reagan on a dinosaur. He had Governor Gary Herbert fending off sharks with a tennis racket, and Hawaiians on giant seahorses, and then a lot of jokes in there. What he claimed the solution to climate change is right here. If you look at this, that the solution to climate change is not this unserious resolution talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal. It says the solution then is that of human flourishing. So the solution to so many of our problems at all times and all places is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids. So that's his proposal for combating climate change. The logic, where he gets the justification for this.
He's being serious?
He's saying it on the Senate floor. He's saying that more babies will mean more forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. He said American babies in particular are going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. Basically, what he's claiming is that if you have a lot of Americans having kids, having babies, some of these babies are going to be forward-thinking, they're going to be smart, they're going to be thinking about climate change, and then they're going to be able to solve the problem. Thoughts on this? Say, what do you mean he's lazy?
He's just waiting for us to change.
Well, the question is he talking about you, or is he talking about people that aren't born yet still? Both? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, I know several very educated people who don't believe in climate change. And if that's the case, and if we do have people like this, then they're not going to make any steps to change it, whether or not they're intelligent.
Okay. All right, so you're arguing that you can have some well-educated people that do not believe in climate change. A lot of it depends on information that people have been exposed to. By the way, I wanted to highlight with Mike Lee, he does receive campaign contributions from fossil fuel industry. So some individuals would say, well, that's definitely going to affect his outlook on climate change and the kinds of things that he proposes for the future. By the time that the people he's talking about should be having kids, like he might be way older, it could be 20, 30 years from now, who knows if he would even be a senator at that point. So Ocasio-Cortez, she responded on Twitter to Mike Lee's speech. She said, like many other women and working people, I occasionally suffer from imposter syndrome. Do you know what imposter syndrome is? Anyone
No.
have an idea of that? So this is something, especially when someone's new in a career, they might sometimes have moments of self-doubt. For example, let's say you have a brand new doctor and they're performing surgery on someone. They went through school, like they did good in school. They don't have as much experience as older doctors, and sometimes they just question, like, am I truly qualified to be in this position? Do I know what I'm doing? Even someone that maybe is like a new PhD professor, they might compare themselves to other professors that have been teaching and doing research for 10 to 20 years. They might question, like, am I really like where I should be? Do I know what I'm doing? So she was saying that sometimes she like basically has that. She said in those small moments, especially on hard days, you might wonder like if people that criticize you are right. That's the main message she's saying. But then they do things like this to clear it right up. If this guy can be senator, then you can do anything. She's basically saying like any time that you might have self-doubt, just think about this guy being a United States senator. If this guy's a senator, then it's like I should definitely be in the House of Representatives. That's the main idea that she's communicating.
So she's sort of making fun of him.
Is she making fun of him?
Sort of. That's what it sounds like.
I mean, she's basically saying like his presentation's ridiculous. She's saying like this guy. Basically, she's saying like.
It sounds like she's saying that he's sort of like dumb and doesn't know anything.
I mean, Mike Lee went to BYU Law School. From what I've heard, when it comes to the Constitution, like knows what he's talking about. But she's saying this was a ridiculous presentation. He was doing it mainly trying to make fun of her, but she was indicating that the kinds of things he was saying were something else. She talked about the Green New Deal. Some people criticize the Green New Deal. They say, well, the things that you're proposing to try and combat climate change, how are you going to pay for it? Can it really be done in 10 years like you're proposing? Some people argue it would take way longer periods of time. But she's saying that there were legislators, experts, and advocates that spent countless hours poring over the details of the proposal. She said, that's what you do when you take your job seriously and respect the chamber. This is what happens when you don't, like highlighting that he has pictures up there that he paid for with his congressional funds of like Star Wars pictures.
I would, Wait, so what even is a Green New Deal?
The Green New Deal, it's big. Like I haven't read the whole thing. My understanding of it is it's like she's saying this is the ultimate solution to climate change. Wants to have like less airplanes, and they want to. I believe she claims they should construct some kind of like track system that's above the freeways that connects like people. Yeah, some people have criticized it. Other like experts saying that it could happen, but it might take a little bit longer than
Seems
she
like that'll
proposed.
take like a lot of money.
What was that?
Seems like it'll cost a lot of money.
Yeah, it would be expensive, and she's saying, well, look, it will provide jobs, will stimulate the economy if you have people working, but you have people still saying, like, well, not sure if it's completely realistic. But even if someone's going to criticize the Green New Deal, like, okay, come up with an alternative, like say other things we could do to conserve energy, where like the analysts would point out, like Mike Lee's just making fun of it and saying, like, oh, just have more kids. Yeah, so.
Wouldn't it be easier just to invest in businesses that sell solar panels and stuff and like endorse them more and have like more ads for solar panels and like?
Well, solar panels are like super expensive, so not everyone can.
No, they're not. They're
Yeah,
cheaper than normal.
No, they're
In the
like
long
way.
term,
They're
they
like
are.
way
Because
expensive.
every
though.
year your electrical bill goes up.
But like one
It's-
solar panel I saw is like $8,000.
Let's focus in. Yes, I mean solar. They can pay themselves off long term, but up front they can be pretty expensive. Like a full thing of solar panels for your home can be $30,000. A lot of people don't just have that ready to go for it. But long term, it will be like the money that they were paying for their electric bill. Will be like they're saving on that, but it takes a while to pay them off if you can't pay for them upfront cash. So, yeah, like they can be difficult for some people to try and do. But yeah, that's definitely one idea. Like promote solar panels, promote other types of like renewable energy. Wind power is still pretty expensive, but one of the things that he highlighted though, so he's talking about, he's trying to be funny. He's talking about like this creature from Star Wars. I think it's called a Tauntaun. Is that? Said not only are tauntauns carbon neutral, but according to one report, a long time ago and far, far away, they may even be fully recyclable for their warmth on especially cold nights.
Yeah, you cut them open and sleep in them.
Yeah, that's what you
So that's Mike Lee though, representing Utah right there. The rest of the nation, like this story was on KSL, but they also were they were talking about this on other like national news sites. All right, let's go ahead and pull out our notes. We're gonna go back to physical geography of Africa. Yeah.